today. Congresswoman Haaland knows firsthand how the decisions that we make here in Washington affect communities across the country, especially in rural western states. As representative of the 1st District of New Mexico, Congresswoman Haaland has served as the Vice Chair of the House Committee on Natural Resources and the Chair of the Subcommittee on National Parks, Forests, and Public Lands. As a committee leader, she demonstrated her commitment to working across party lines. Of all the members of Congress newly elected in 2018, she introduced the most bills with bipartisan co-sponsors. I have no doubt that Congresswoman Haaland's bipartisan experience and her leadership will help us restore our nation-to-nation relationship to Indian country and make conservation and outdoor recreation a key part of our national economic recovery. What we've learned over the last several years is that our relationship to our public lands and our loyalty to America's special places has the ability to unite us all. Americans want more equitable access to our public lands, environmental justice, solutions for the climate crisis, protection of wildlife and clean water, and they want rural economic development. Congresswoman Haaland also understands that confronting the climate crisis, not denying it, and transforming our economy will not come without costs and trade-offs. That is especially true for fossil fuel workers, including many New Mexicans who have long powered our economy. I see Congresswoman Haaland as a true partner for states like ours as we diversify our economy, invest in our communities, and remain a global leader in producing and exporting energy. I am confident Congresswoman Haaland will use the best available science to restore our landscapes, open up new outdoor recreation opportunities for everyone, put our public lands to work in confronting the climate crisis, and help Indian country recover and rebuild from COVID-19. I am eager to support her confirmation so she can get to work protecting our natural heritage for future generations, and I sincerely hope that the other members of this committee will join me in supporting her nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Heinrich. Now I'm going to introduce Representative Don Young, our friend from the other side of the aisle, if you will. I'll have him introduce Representative Haaland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Manchin, and thank you, Mr. Barrasso, the ranking member, and all other members of the committee. You may be wondering why I'm doing this, because I am here because Debbie and I became friends when she was the chairman of the Lands Committee. I was the ranking member on it. And I've had her reach across and talk to me about issues that affect Alaska and other areas. But I will tell you, if you don't know, I'm going to give you a little history. I'm the Dean of the House. I'm the oldest member of both bodies. I have served with 10 presidents and 15 secretaries of Interior. There's not much I don't and have not seen. I have a theory, because I'm a mariner, that the captain of the ship has a right to choose who he has as his crew. I'm not always agreed with the secretaries of Interior, but I will say that that's the responsibility of the president. President Biden has chosen Deb, and she is accepted, and I would suggest respectfully you'll find out that she will listen to you. She may not change. Like, she and I do not agree on carbon fuels. You know that. We've said this before. But it's my job to try to convince her that she's not all right, and her job to convince me I'm not all right. That's the important part about the secretary. Also, you keep in mind that another reason I'm supporting her, she is an American Indian. I am quite proud of that fact. I'm close to my Alaska Natives and American Indians. And like you mentioned about it's a long time overdue, there should have been a Secretary of Interior long before. We were fortunate to have Morris Thompson, a friend of mine, as the BIA director. And we had Tara Sweeney as a BIA director. But always the BIA has been under the, I call it, under the top of the Park Service and all the other agencies under the Department of Interior. They were actually forgotten. And I think Deb will bring a new role to this because she has an interest. Of course, she is one. And she'll be able to take and raise the American Indian, the first Americans, to the position I think they can be and have achieved in the state of Alaska. For that, I'm very proud of it. You know, I heard her introduced by the other members, some of the things she's done, but she worked with me. She is across the aisle. We introduced the Indian Buffalo Management Act, passed. The Progress Act, passed. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Badges Act passed. This is bipartisan. So she's been able to do that. And I would suggest respectfully that her belonging to a Pueblo, or her working with her Native people, would be beneficial to the Secretary of Interior. As the ranking member mentioned, a lot of responsibility, huge amounts of lands that a lot of people don't recognize. And accessibility is crucial to me as far as an American. We've had previous Secretaries of Interiors that really disallowed access. And I'm saying that's inappropriate. I want her to be able to consider the fact that there's many accesses to these lands that don't just take pictures. And now I'm going to talk about, I love to hunt. And everybody says, well, that's terrible. It's not. It's the management of the game. And I want her to understand a lot of these lands that we're prohibited of might be accessible for management of fish and wildlife. I will say I think she is a friend, and as a member of this, I say administration, she'll do a good job. She'll work for us, and she'll reach across the aisle. I have a lot, by the way, at stake here. I am an oil-producing state, too. And we lost a lot of jobs, not because of Deb. We lost them because of the president and signing an executive order. Really a hardship on us. We're trying to explain, if we have people in the Department of Interior such as Deb, maybe there'll be a balance. And anybody thinks you're going to cut off fossil fuel immediately is smoking pot. That's legally in the state of Alaska, by the way. But I'm just saying they're not realizing, you know, only 19% of a barrel of oil is used for propulsion. The rest of it, if you look around this room, including that rug, all kinds of different uses. Coal and oil molecules are the biggest structure elements we have in our society today. And I know this is being done because of climate change. I recognize that. But that won't solve the problem. If we're going to do this, we have to work it into it gradually. We'll find out all the sources of energy may not be the best in the world like they did in Texas. So I want this secretary, as she's confirmed, I hope you do confirm her, understand there's a broad picture here. And her job is to understand is no longer a little cartoon. This is the big picture. And she'll have to have the responsibility to do the job I know she can do. And I urge a confirmation of Deb for the Secretary of Interior. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman. And you are more than welcome to stay if you'd like to. If not, we understand you probably have a pressing schedule.
You're through with me. Thank you.
Thank you. The rules of the committee, which apply to all nominees, require that they be sworn in connection with their testimony. So if you would rise and raise your right hand, Congresswoman. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give to the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
You may be seated. I'm going to ask you 3 questions addressed to each nominee before this committee. So will you be available to appear before the committee and other congressional committees to represent department positions and respond to issues of concern to the Congress?
Yes, Chairman.
Are you aware of any personal holdings, investments, or interests that could constitute a conflict of interest or create the appearance of such a conflict should you be confirmed and assume the office to which you have been nominated by the President?
No, Chairman.
Are you involved or do you have any assets held in a blind trust?
No, sir.
Thank you. We're going to start with our questions now, and I'll take the liberty of asking a few questions, and we'll... Oh, I'm so sorry. You go ahead and make your opening statement, then we'll move to the questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chairman's just getting used to this job.
Guatsi Hopa Duhiname Itzartuitza Shuimi Hanu. Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, members of the committee, thank you so much for having me here today. I wouldn't be here without the love and support of my child Soma, my partner Skip, who is with me this morning, sitting behind me, my mom, Mary Toya, who's watching from Isla de Pueblo, my extended family, and generations of ancestors who have sacrificed so much so I could be here today. I acknowledge that we are on the ancestral homelands of the Nacotchtank, Anacostan, and Piscataway people. As many of you know, my story is unique. Although today I serve as a member of Congress and was the vice chair of the House Natural Resources Committee, if confirmed, I would be the first Native American to serve as Cabinet Secretary. This historic nature of my confirmation is not lost on me, but I will say it's not about me. Rather, I hope this nomination would be an inspiration for Americans moving forward together as one nation and creating opportunities for all of us. As the daughter of a Pueblo woman, I was taught to value hard work. My mother is a Navy veteran, was a civil servant at the Bureau of Indian Education for 25 years, and she raised 4 kids as a military wife. My dad, the grandson of immigrants, was a 30-year career Marine who served in Vietnam. He received the Silver Star and is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. I spent summers in Mesita, our small village on Laguna Pueblo, the location of my grandparents' traditional home. It was there that I learned about my culture from my grandmother by watching her cook and by participating in traditional feast days and ceremonies. It was in the cornfields with my grandfather where I learned the importance of water and protecting our resources, where I gained a deep respect for the earth. As a military family, we moved every few years when I was a kid, but no matter where we lived, my dad taught me and my siblings to appreciate nature, whether on a mountain trail or walking along the beach. I'm not a stranger to the struggles many families across America face today. I've lived most of my adult life paycheck to paycheck. I've pieced together health care for me and my child as a single mom, and at times relied on food stamps to put food on the table. It's because of these struggles that I fully understand the role Interior must play in the President's plan to build back better, to responsibly manage our natural resources, to protect them for future generations, so that we can continue to work, live, hunt, fish, and prey among them. I understand how important the department is for all the stakeholders who rely on it and the communities whose economies are connected to it. I know the bipartisan accomplishments of this committee stand out in Congress. Your work led to Interior having significant resources and authorities, especially with the Great American Outdoors Act and the Public Lands Package. I will work collaboratively with all members of this committee to ensure these acts are implemented well. As chair of the Subcommittee on National Parks, Forests, and Public Lands, I also worked on these issues in Congress and listened to all of my colleagues and constituents about ways to improve management of the department. I am proud of the bipartisan manner in which we move these bills through my subcommittee and to the House floor. As I've learned in this role, there's no question that fossil energy does and will continue to play a major role in America for years to come. I know how important oil and gas revenues are to critical services, but we must also recognize that the energy industry is innovating, and our climate challenge must be addressed. Together, we can work to position our nation and all of its people for success in the future. And I am committed to working cooperatively with all stakeholders and all of Congress to strike the right balance going forward. As part of this balance, the department has a role in harnessing the clean energy potential of our public lands and to create jobs and new economic opportunities. The President's agenda demonstrates that America's public lands can and should be engines for clean energy production. President Biden also knows that restoring and conserving our lands through a civilian climate corps has the potential to spur job creation. If confirmed, I will work my heart out for everyone. The families of fossil fuel workers who help build our country, ranchers and farmers who care deeply for their lands, communities with legacies of toxic pollution, people of color whose stories deserve to be heard, and those who want jobs of the future. I vow to lead the Interior Department ethically and with honor and integrity. I will listen to and work with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. I will support Interior's public servants and be a careful steward of taxpayer dollars. I will ensure that the Interior Department's decisions are based on science. I will honor the sovereignty of tribal nations and recognize their part in America's story, and I'll be a fierce advocate for our public lands. I believe we all have a stake in the future of our country, and I believe that every one of us, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, shares a common bond: our love for the outdoors and a desire and obligation to keep our nation livable for future generations. I carry my life experiences with me everywhere I go. It's those experiences that give me hope for the future. If an Indigenous woman from humble beginnings can be confirmed as Secretary of the Interior, our country holds promise for everyone. Finally, I want to give special thanks to you, Chairman Manchin, for calling this hearing today and for sharing with me the issues and needs of the people that you represent in West Virginia. If confirmed, I will listen to all of the people represented by members of this committee and this Congress. I'm grateful for your time today, and I'm ready to serve. And thank you, Senator Heinrich, for your kind introduction, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Congresswoman Haaland. And now we will begin our questions. Congresswoman, the United States became a net total energy exporter in 2019. It's the first time in 67 years we've been in that position, partly due to the surge in domestic oil and gas production. And in your opening statement, you noted that fossil energy does and will continue to play a major role in America for years to come. So my question would be, do you believe that it's in our best interest to maintain our energy independence? And what role do you see fossil energy playing in that?
Thank you, Chairman, for that question. And yes, of course, we absolutely need energy independence, and I believe President Biden agrees with that statement as well. I know that we want to move forward with some clean energy. We want to get to net zero, and as the chairwoman of the Subcommittee on National Parks, Forests, and Public Lands, yes, 25% of our carbon comes from our public lands. So I think that as we move forward with the technology that you and I spoke about when we had our conversation, we want to move forward with innovation and all of this for our energy needs. So I think that's not going to happen overnight. And so we will absolutely rely on the fossil energy that you and the ranking member spoke about in your opening statements. But at the same time, I think we can move forward with the technology and innovation as well.
Yeah. Well, I think you pretty much know my position on that. I'm totally committed to innovation, not elimination, because I think we can do it in a practical, responsible way. I said in my opening statement, the Department of Interior is a massive agency, as you have just heard, the responsibilities that come with that, being head of that agency. So if you're focusing on the big picture, what do you or that you would like to have for your leadership?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chairman. Well, of course, I feel, as I mentioned in my opening statement, my mom was a federal employee for 25 years. I value the dedication of our career employees, and I believe very strongly that we need to make sure that we are appreciating them the way they should be appreciated so they can do their jobs. I want very much to help make sure that everyone's working together. With respect to clean energy, yes, that's absolutely a priority of President Biden, his Build Back Better plan to create those clean energy jobs across the country. The Civilian Climate Corps that I know will engage tens of thousands of Americans in the work of restoring our public lands is also important. And if I will say, with respect to Indian country, I worked very hard in Congress in my first term on broadband internet, and I think that during this pandemic we have seen the disparities that a lot of communities face as that has unfolded. Broadband internet service, and of course I will say with respect to Indian country, missing and murdered Indigenous women, grateful for the help of senators on this side of the Capitol who have helped me move that issue forward. I think with 2 bills passing, that's the tip of the iceberg.
Let me say, since 1977, coal companies, since I'm very familiar with the coal countries and coal companies that work in those areas, they've paid a fee for every ton of coal they have mined to fund the abandoned mine land reclamation. We call it the AML program. If confirmed, you will oversee the agency that administers the AML program and the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement, which we call SMACRA. With that, the hard rock mining hasn't had any changes in their law since 1872. They don't adhere to the same restrictions that we do. We've talked about basically making those changes that are most responsible and most needed. We're not hindering any company whatsoever, except we have an awful lot of hard rock mining that's gone left unclaimed and unrestored that could be put back in productive use. So I just want to know if, confirm the Secretary, do you intend to continue supporting extension of the fee collection authority of SMACRA, which is the AML money? And a lot of people want to eliminate that, and I think it would be detrimental to our environment. And do you support extending those fees for an additional 15 years? That's what we're talking about, to take care of all the abandoned line. And would you be receptive to looking at the hard rock mining to make sure they come into compliance to take care of their responsibilities?
Thank you, Chairman. And yes, I'm very familiar with abandoned mines, and we have a lot of them in New Mexico, particularly on the Navajo Nation, and we've seen that it's polluted water. And so I agree wholeheartedly that we need the resources to make sure we are protecting the health and safety of our fellow Americans. And so I look forward to working with you on this issue. And I think that if we have the resources to clean those things up, that it'll make life easier for everybody.
Thank you, Congressman. I have many more questions, but my time is up, and I'm going to go now to my friend, Senator Brasso.
Well, thanks so much, Senator Manchin. I'd just like to follow up on some of the things that Senator Manchin started with. Yes or no answers on this, if you could. As a general matter, should the federal government continue to permit oil and gas wells in this country?
Yes, and I believe that's happening.
And as a general matter, should the federal government continue to permit coal mines in this country?
Yes, and Ranking Member, if I could just say, I know that coal mines were not a part of President Biden's executive order.
As a general matter, should the federal government continue to permit copper, lithium, and other hard rock mines in this country? Senator Manchin was just asking about some hard rock mining issues.
Senator, I believe that if we do these things in a responsible manner and protect the health and safety of workers, I see us moving forward. The earth is here to provide for us, and that's my belief.
As a general matter, should the federal government continue to permit natural gas pipelines in this country?
Senator, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I believe this will go on for quite some time, and I know that President Biden he has put a pause on new leases, not existing ones.
The question was on pipelines. So as a general matter, should the federal government continue to permit oil pipelines in the country?
Senator, with respect to the Department of Interior, wherever pipelines fall under the authority of the Department of Interior, of course.
As a general matter, should the federal government continue to permit electrical transmission lines in this country?
I believe that would help our energy needs, sir.
And as a general matter, should the federal government continue to permit natural gas or nuclear power plants in the country?
Senator, I assume that what I would like to say is, as the secretary, if I'm confirmed as secretary, of course I would follow the law on all of these things.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns we have is that there are 3 senators on this committee are medical doctors. We have Dr. Cassidy, who's a gastroenterologist. Dr. Marshall is an obstetrician. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. And just a couple of months ago, you tweeted, "Republicans don't believe in science." Pretty broad statement that you made there, and it was on your, this was in October of 2020, so not too long ago. Mm-hmm. Now, we're also Republicans. Do you think that as medical doctors we don't believe in science? I mean, how do you stand by this statement?
Senator, yes, if you're a doctor, I would assume that you believe in science.
Well, Republicans as well. So, I mean, it's concerning to those of us who've gone through training, believe in science, and yet for a broad brush that we're all disbelievers. It's a concern to those of us as we're here today to ask questions about. So, in his first few weeks in office, President Biden issued several orders, as we talked about, banning new oil and natural gas leasing on federal lands and waters. It's estimated this long-term leasing ban is going to cost your home state of New Mexico 62,000 jobs, my home state of Wyoming 33,000 jobs. A long-term leasing ban is also going to cost, and I kind of run around the table here of members on this committee, Louisiana 48,000 jobs, Colorado 18,000 jobs, Mississippi 14,000 jobs, North Dakota 13,000 jobs, Utah 11,000 jobs, 7,000 jobs in Alaska and Montana. Those are just jobs represented by people on this committee. Now you had said you will work your heart out for everyone, including fossil fuel workers. My question is for you, why not just let these workers keep their jobs?
Senator, it's my understanding that President Biden has put just a pause on new leases. He didn't ban new leases. He didn't put a moratorium on new leases. It's a pause to review the fossil program at the federal fossil fuel program. And so I know that there are still thousands of leases and thousands of permits that are moving forward. And
so then if confirmed, would you tell the president that it's unwise to continue the pause as a permanent ban?
I don't believe that it is a permanent ban, Senator. I am more than happy to work with you and to work with, of course, at the pleasure of the president and along with, if I'm confirmed, my colleagues to make sure that we're doing everything we can to create jobs for Americans.
Because President Biden has justified his ban on new oil and gas leasing on federal lands and waters. He cited climate change. Are you aware of any evidence that suggests that a ban on oil and gas leasing on federal lands and waters was going to reduce the world's total production of oil and gas?
I bet no, sir.
Yeah, and are we aware of any evidence that suggests that a ban on oil and gas leasing on federal lands and waters is going to reduce the world's total consumption of oil and gas?
Ranking member, I haven't actually looked at all of these statistics, but I believe that it's a situation where everyone should work together.
Yeah, because it seems that the president's ban on oil and gas leasing isn't going to reduce the world's production or consumption of oil and gas. So I would just return to the question of why we wouldn't let these Americans keep their jobs, because we're not seeing any other country has banned energy production because of climate change. Russia hasn't done it, Saudi Arabia, Iran, India, China. So I continue to believe it's a misguided decision by the president. So thanks so much. And I have questions for a second round, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cantwell. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congresswoman Haaland, congratulations on your historic nomination. And I so appreciate your leadership in the House. I tell you, you had one of the greatest moments, I think, for the state of Washington when you led the final passage of the Spokane settlement bill. To see Native American woman standing there on the House floor helping us get something passed that took such a long time. And I would venture to say that if you had been Interior Secretary during that time period, we might have actually gotten this done sooner. So mark me down as one who very much appreciates the fact that the Secretary of Interior, being Native American, will give us an extra advantage on BIA issues that are so important to Indian country overall. So thank you for that. And so glad you mentioned the Great American Outdoors Act. I almost feel like your nomination is this proxy fight about the future of fossil fuels. And you've already stated very clearly here, you are going to carry out President Biden's agenda. And so we very much appreciate the fact that you're doing that. And that's what I think a president deserves, his nominee. So I think with the Great American Outdoors Act, we saw the value of public lands. In fact, we saw that the value of creating more outdoor recreation helped a juggernaut of an industry now become third, just behind finance and healthcare, as a very big job employer in the United States of America. So I hope that our colleagues will think about our bipartisan success there and how much those public lands mean to us from an economic revenue perspective. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, obviously on the coal leasing front, is that under Secretary Jewell and the Obama administration, you know, we were trying to get accurate assessments of the value of federal leasing of coal revenues. When I was ranking member, we pushed for this because obviously we have a lot of coal trains that go right through the state of Washington. The impacts of that accurate coal price matter because of mining in places like Powder River Basin, which accounts for 40% of the nation's annual supply and impacts communities all across our country. So I want to make sure, because the Trump administration then came and overturned that assessment. So I want to make sure that despite that decision, that you are going to work to make sure that there is a fair value for the taxpayer on the price of coal leasing and the economic and climate impacts that it has?
Senator, our public lands belong to all of us, and taxpayers deserve to have a fair return. So I look forward to having more conversations about this and appreciate you raising this issue with me.
Thank you. Thank you. On the Arctic Wildlife Refuge, I wanted to make sure that you are committed to using a science-based approach when it comes to protecting the Arctic wildlife. I'm glad that the President has taken action to stop on leasing, but what can you tell me about your efforts to promote a science-based approach to protecting the Arctic Wildlife Refuge?
I can promise you that if I'm confirmed as Secretary, that we will be guided by science in all of those decisions.
And then on the issue of wildfires, which is a big Pacific Northwest issue, the Department of Interior has key tools that we have now given to it in the last big fire package that we were able to work on together. This is new technology for everything from forecasting to locating firefighters to the implementation of coordination with air support. Will you commit to continue to work to rapidly implement those provisions of the last legislation on fighting fire?
I believe very strongly, Senator, that technology can play an incredibly helpful role in detecting fires, and I appreciate you caring about that issue as well.
Thank you.